Yeah, we're down a few folks, but we have a quorum by my count. Rather than calling the full roll, maybe just on the notes, if we could take down, we have Michelle, Berlene, Christopher, Christie, me, Sally, Pamela, Ross, and Carolyn. We're at our quorum and able to get going. The first thing on the agenda is review and approval of minutes from May 27th. Does anyone have any suggested changes for those? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? Carolyn. Second will go Pamela. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. All right, minutes are approved. Next is our mission note.
So you will always get to hear from me and give me such positive feedback on the work that Preschool Promise does. And sometimes I forget to say that that work is possible thanks to a team and the executive leaders that we have. So I just want to take a moment to say congratulations to Kenitra on completing the YWCA Rising Star program. Okay, as our deputy director. Rigorous program, as you know, very competitive to get in, and she completed that program. Graduation was great, and really had an opportunity not only to sharpen her leadership skills, which are already great, but make connections with other leaders throughout the community. So really proud of her for doing that. And also congratulations to Brittany Pina, who just completed Cincy Leads, right? To know that the full Preschool Promise team is equipped, is ready, is skilled, but we also live our core values of that continuous improvement and being committed to making sure that we're the best, so we do the best by our children and community. So I just wanted to highlight their accomplishments.
Congrats to you both. That's really exciting, and we love seeing the team out and doing good work in the community. So congrats to you both. Next, we have committee reports. Christy, it looks like you're stepping in for Marcia today.
I am, thank you. So the first item is just an update to the governance principles. So I think it was the last board meeting, there was an update made related to terms, and apparently there was a stray clause that was added in on page 6. So I'm just notifying the organization of that. It was in your pre-reading. It looks like it's up on the screen. It's redlined out. So the redlined out version would be the updated version. So I'm just bringing that to everyone's attention. In addition to that, board terms and board officers, the committee has reviewed the matrix to identify the needed skills. I think we have a slide for that as well. It's the recruitment matrix right there, and this is going to be shared with the nomination organizations. We looked through, we have a big tracker of all of the answers that you have all filled in on spreadsheets about yourselves to identify sort of where we have needs. And so this is the matrix in terms of areas of expertise, connections, age, race, ethnicity that we're kind of looking for as we look to fill vacant board slots coming up. Are there any questions or comments on that?
I have one about age.
Yes.
What was the discussion or criteria around that age span, 19 to 34?
Sure, yeah, I'll ask. Go ahead, Paul.
I think consistently year over year, we have had less than 2 board members in that particular category, where we have almost 50% of our parent population in that category, right? So we strive to have, in many cases, board that's representative of the population that we serve, and that is a number where we have consistently been off. Right? That they don't reflect the families and constituencies that we serve. That's our biggest gap in terms of age. There was a time when 80% of our board members were in the 55 and over category. We've backed it down a little bit, but not down enough to that particular age bracket.
Okay. Sometimes the chronological and psychological ages are 2 different things. I want you to limit yourself that if you had someone that met the other criteria that's to bring expertise and was 35, that you wouldn't just limit it to, I'm sure you take that in. This is just a gap.
Sounds young to me.
we've got quite a few spaces coming open, and I think it's just, this is generally things where we want to try to improve our representation. It's definitely not a we won't take anyone over.
Okay.
We, I think at the moment we actually have 0 people in that population, and it's an area of emphasis when we're looking at filling new spots. But to your point, it's not don't consider anyone that doesn't do that.
You're saying this is more a message to the nominating organizations,
Yes.
what we hope to.
Okay. I understand the point that Verlene is making, and I appreciate that. One of the things that I think about, though, in that age bracket is that a large number of those folks probably have young families, and so getting to meetings even at 4 o'clock might be challenging. And not saying there's not those out there who can, but that's something for us to consider is time as well.
Job flexibility.
Job flexibility
Yeah.
and all that. But I think it's a great idea to have that population because they need, so we old folks can help them out.
And actually, Carolyn, I love that you raised that because recently Shar and I had a discussion, not specific to that population, but just even people that you described as old folks have, like, hey, I'm with my grandkids from 4 to 6 sometimes in their schedule. And we talked about maybe finding some times earlier in the day from some of our board meetings next year to try to accommodate different people in different schedules too. So that's something I think we'll have coming up for next year's schedule.
All right, and then on board officers, you see the officer positions that we have here. If anyone is interested in those positions, please let someone from the governance committee know. We can bring that forward. Don't everyone raise your hand at once.
For anyone new, the governance committee brings a slate of officers forward at our annual meeting, which is September. So this is around the time where the governance committee begins that consideration. That's how we do officers for the year.
What is the process for, and I'm not saying that because I'm interested, I'm saying that, I'm curious to know, you guys have something prepared by, or names by that date in September?
I'll try to answer this, and if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me either. I think generally the governance committee meeting prior to that, what our process, at least informally, has been, hey, is anyone interested? Please let us know. Hey, people still there, if you're staying on the board, are you interested in continuing? Then the governance committee has a meeting and says, here are the people who expressed interest, here are the people in their roles staying. That's that they stay if the governance committee wanted them. And then the governance committee votes on a recommendation to bring to our full board. I don't know that we've ever had like a quote unquote like election. It's just kind of been if you're interested, what the governance committee does, they put a group together and that comes to the board. And at least as best I can remember, every time the governance committee's brought somebody to the board to approve it, it's been pretty painless. Is that?
Yeah, I will say though that the governance committee does do a significant amount of due diligence and that there is a job description for work here that is a little bit more extensive than just what you see, because what you see was just pulled directly from the governance principles. And in years when we've had multiple people who expressed an interest, they were asked to submit a brief letter as well as a bio that aligned with what those characteristics were so that the governance committee can fully consider and discharge their duties to be able to do that.
I'll use this time to note that a couple of our officers don't have a ton of time left on our board. So for those interested, maybe not even necessarily for next year, but for future years, we're going to need people stepping into these roles in the next few years. So that'll be part of governance's discussion as well.
Okay. And then I think we have one more slide, and is this in the packet or not? I can't recall. Task list. So So this is at the committee meeting, we went through our items on the task list. We have quite a bit going on right now, but a lot of it is prepping for the annual meeting coming up and the transition of board seats. So I don't know if you want to go through specific things, or this is sort of what we're up to. I would say that one of the things that we take on in the committee is the board education topic. So at any point in time, if you have recommendations or thoughts on areas that you think would be helpful for board education, please let us know. And then, what's the last item here? Cultivation and meetings taking place around additional board members. So I think that would be, since that's coming up in September, that would be the big item up on the agenda at this point.
And I think the task list too was just responsive to the question that Glenn raised at the last board meeting, to really give you all a snapshot of, sometimes we don't report out every activity that's happening, but we're actually ahead of schedule in review of the governance principles and the succession strategy.
Do we need to approve the governance update, principles update, is that a part of it? Yeah, thank you, Christy, for filling in there for Marcia. Are there any questions on the update to the governance principles? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Berlene, second from Christopher. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, they're approved. Christy, thank you. The governance committee report for finance and audit, I think we have Hector virtually, is that right?
We do.
That is correct.
Hey, Hector.
Hi, good afternoon. If I can get the video going. There we go. So, yes, am I ready to go? Are we good?
We're ready.
Excellent. So, this is the packet I prepare every year with the same charts and same areas. I'm going to walk through it slowly. I normally highlight the key items or key changes from year to year. And there's some that I haven't highlighted, I'll just talk over, but let's just go down the slide deck and then we'll hit those as they come around. First of all, we've increased the maximum TA payment, which is higher than inflation, so we continue to try to increase the real TA payment in real terms to our providers, because we're still way below what most of the analysis shows would be a reasonable amount in order to keep high-quality preschools operating. So we keep trying to make our way up to that number. On the quality improvement side, and it's not new, but generally speaking, we expect to have the same number of students next year as this year. And you'll see that in the next slide deck. It'll be, the next one, when we get to it, it'll be much more clear. For quality improvement, new this year, we're bringing some of the professional development in-house and adding new vendors to it. We're focusing on trying to keep the teachers highly trained, and frankly, more than this year, in prior years as well, we've seen that near the end of the fiscal, many teachers don't have the required biennial number of hours. So we're also coming up with programs for that this year and obviously in the next fiscal year as well. And then cost of quality, we're simply trying, same programs, same process, we're simply trying to increase the number of Teacher Promise Grant recipients and Staff Support Fund recipients. And this has been an area, and Chara can attest to this, and if Kenidra is in the audience, then she as well, we have difficulty here filling what we aspired to in the beginning of the year. It's just many different barriers get into, example, increasing staff support fund or increasing TPG. And teachers drop off as the year progresses as well, so we slowly slope down from there. But we'll go to the next slide and talk a little bit in more detail about tuition assistance. If you look in the upper left here, and at any time if you need to interrupt, please go right ahead and we'll chat and then we'll keep moving on. But in the upper left, you'll see how the actual TA payments track with the fiscal year to date 25 is the blue line and the yellow is the budget for next year. So we budgeted to mirror this year, which has been our highest enrollment year. In the lower left-hand corner, you'll see the differences in FPL, and you'll see that the families that are 200% of FPL or below are the significant, and I mean very significant. Wow. So not only do I provide the number of particular students in each of the different categories, but also on the dollar terms on the right-hand side. It goes back to our founding as we expanded the FPL layers that we served. There was always a fear early on that the people in the 2 to 250 or 250 to 300 would consume so many resources, we would not be able to take care of the people in the 200 and below. But that's never proven to be the case for us. All right, I'll move on then to quality improvement. In quality improvement, a couple of years back, we switched the way we do quality improvement. And we have a particular number of programs that we target now. That's happened this year, it's happening again next year, for development programs. In other words, to pass through quality improvement and get the training that comes from coaching, the classroom, the various different services that we provide. And you'll see those on the right. But on the left, you see the total that we're targeting for the new fiscal year, of which 45 carry over from this one, and we'll add 15 new ones. One of the advantages of this design is that it allows us to budget much better as we start to decrease funds availability, right? As funds become more difficult, knowing how many programs you need to plug, as opposed to having programs enter at any time, at any moment, it was too difficult.
Hector, hold on 1 second, we have a question in the room.
Hi Hector, can you hear me?
You might have to
Oh.
go back there for that.
Light's not on,
Hi Hector, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
This
Clearly,
is
thank
Pam
you.
Bowers, thank you. I just have one question. I heard you say that we have the same number of students from this year that we're projected for next year. When I look at the budgeted preschool program enrollment, is this number 45, is that a classes? Are those rooms, are those sites?
Oh, no, this is a quality improvement, and this would be different sites. So we expect to have 60 sites that will be assisting in improving their quality.
With the same number of students and the same budget amount?
No, the number of students relates to TA.
Okay. Okay.
You'll
Okay.
see it says tuition assistance and the number of students. In this page, it's just improvement I'm focusing on.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. And then on the right side, you'll see how our quality improvement money.
One sec, Hector, we have another question.
Oh, wait
Yeah.
till he's finished with this, because I have two questions, one for each of these charts. So.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
That's fine.
services we provide, and I'll wait now.
Hector, maybe turn your camera off because you're freezing.
let's try that and see if that improves it.
If you want to keep rolling through this slide, Hector, I think when you finish up on this slide, we'll have some questions.
Okay, so on the quality improvement side, then on the right side, you can see how the dollars are spread into the different categories of quality improvement spending that we have. Notable here is that we have $0 allocated to outdoor learning spaces, and we have $0 allocated to FCC insurance subsidy. And frankly, it says 0, but it's like $1,000 and it just rounds down to 0. Okay, I'll stop now.
I had two questions, but I think they're both on the programmatic side, not so much the budget. But on the chart, the 45 and 15, how have you taken into account that some number of that 45 will roll over to TA and some may close, because we were hearing earlier about a lot closing after the pandemic and other challenges. So that was my question about, we have 45 now rolling over, but some of those will either become tuition assistance or not make it, right?
Yeah, and knowing how Brittany normally analyzes this, if she had a significant drop of programs, she would know she would have funds left over to either augment the programs that remain or potentially add a program or two as the year progressed. So that's normally how she would analyze it.
Okay, so that may be how many in total, but not necessarily at any one point in time. Because some may move on and.
Yeah, as we start the year, she went through her list of programs and said, okay, these 45 are continuing on, and I expect to go after these other 15 that are out in the general Cincinnati public school geography. So that's how we come up with the math.
Okay. What you'll see on our dashboard is a snapshot in time at the month end prior to the board meeting that'll tell you how many are in our QI cohort and how many are in our TA cohort, and then in the bottom right, how many have closed. So you'll see that on a monthly basis. When we do our end of year for our annual report, we assess all of that movement that happened during that fiscal year, but it is also just a snapshot in time.
And then my other question, more on the programmatic side, is about the training, the professional development, and whether we're adding because our partners foresee and others aren't meeting the need, or are we competing with those that we're funding?
That's a
So I'll tell you the discussion that I had with Brittany on this particular topic, because it's a topic of productivity for us. We have one key provider that does that. And then around that key provider, we make information available to our preschool providers about other Okra available classes, including the ones that foresee, or formerly the ones that used to be at the district. And what we're trying to do is change availability, hours, options. You know, when you do it in-house, you can create a program that's more targeted to the issue you see than opposed to having to take the off-the-shelf Okra-approved programming that someone else is doing. So I think that's the focus. I don't know that I would call it competing. I would call it complementary, really, is what I would say.
So we're specifically filling gaps that do not exist. I mean, filling gaps because it's not being offered in the community either at the time or the topic or some other reason it's not meeting the provider's needs.
So let me take this one too, Hector. That is our intention, And what we found is, we have really strong partners that are willing to share that in 4C and as the district as well. What we found at the end of this term was we didn't start over planning and adding additional until in our partnership, as Hector said, we saw the gap, trying to race to that deadline. We never want to reinvent the wheel. We never want to start there. But if we have a collective group of providers that say, this is what we think we need at this specific time, then we try to create that. But we also use it as a recruitment tool, because there are still some providers in our network that haven't opted in our CPS footprint, that have not opted in to be a part of the network. And it does not cost us anything additional to make that seed offering. So part of the strategy too is to use it as an enticement and to build partnerships in that PD that we have those offerings. And it's a slick model. You know, I have to say thank you to both 4C and Learning Grove and the district as well, because I think all of us strive to leverage those resources to make sure every seat is filled. I wish it worked differently, or that when you confirm, you can make sure that the seat's gonna be filled, but things happen. And so we found a necessity to do this, and sometimes on topics that providers have said very candidly to us, they don't want to be in a big room to do it. They want to be in a small room with other people that may be in their neighborhood, or they want to be in a setting that's only family child care providers. Preschool Promise has a unique ability to create that type of learning environment that our other partners may not have.
So,
Make sure you're using the microphone, so.
okay, you can hear me. So then, even though they want that, are these professional development classes approved and can be counted towards those licensing issues or certification or center?
We do not offer a class that's not OCRA approved, that we pay for with public dollars. If we have a training class or professional development opportunity that we're offering that has been requested, for example, for business supports, that's not OCRA approved, we use private dollars to fund that.
Any other questions? Before Hector keeps moving on? All right, Hector, if you want to keep marching us through.
Yeah, all right, then we'll move on to our third, stool leg, which is cost of quality. And in cost of quality, the number one spend is Teacher Promise Grant, as you see on the right. And we are looking to fund 65 teachers throughout this year. In addition to that, we have what I described earlier as Staff Support Fund, or SSF, which we are looking to have 24 teachers throughout the year. The TAS, or Teacher Advancement Stipend, rewards teachers for reaching certain academic or training levels. And that basically has been the same year after year after year. It actually sees less use this year than prior years, but we're keeping it in there because all of these, keeping teachers, and just for those of you who are newer, TPG pays for teachers to stay in the same classroom with the same children month after month after month, because teacher stability is a good driver of results for children. So that we check every month to make sure that teachers are still in the same, lead teachers are in the same classroom, and then we make a payment. So all of these programs are meant to increase the quality of the education that the child receives. All right, we'll move on then to the next one. And this, I provide two views of budget versus something else. This is the more substantive view because it takes the fiscal year 26 budget that we're putting forward and compares it to the last forecast we had, and then gives you the comparison. Because the forecast is 5-6 months of actual spend and 6-7 months of forecast. And therefore you have what will become actual here in July 1st versus what has been actual. So it gives you a trend versus actual spending. And then below, in the key changes area, I explained the various changes, the significant changes. So for example, if you look at the total budget line, we're going up about 8%, which is $741,000 versus the forecast. But if you look above in the sum of programs, you'll see that about $690,000 of that is in the program area. So roughly $50,000 is in the non-programmatic area, the increase. And then there, if you want to drill down even further, you can look at tuition assistance and see that tuition assistance is roughly going up $550,000. So if you now jump to where it says key changes from forecast, you'll see number 1, which is they're in the same order as they're presented above. You see tuition assistance, 5% maximum TA increase, that costs CPP around $450,000. There was still a little bit to reconcile there, so more families in the higher cost FPL bracket made the difference. And what I'm describing there is we not only assume what is the maximum amount we will pay, but how many families within that will we have in 100% or below, 100 to 152, and so on. And that'll drive some of the mix. So some families, because they come attached or bearing other aid, are cheaper for CPP than other families. But I try to explain for you in easy, big bucket items the various drivers that are causing tuition assistance, quality improvement, cost of quality, all the different areas to change, and that is below. 2 big items that normally cause a significant change year to year are the contingency, because in the forecast we did not expect to use contingency. So that's the 4th item from the top, which you see as 0, and then you see as 172,731. I'll get to that number in a minute. And then there's an additional contingency in the cost area, which is not highlighted as a line item, but you can see it in key change number 7. So roughly speaking, $225,000 of the increase is simply contingency to protect us in case we over-deliver on program area, or we have an unexpected expense in the expense area. Now, I'm going to focus on that 172,731 because it looks so odd, and frankly, it is. In prior years, we've put big round numbers there, 200, 250, 400, 1,000. This year, because of the new master agreement, creates a very particular way of funding that has formulas based on the number of children enrolled at a certain time in the year, for the district and us. The amount of funds that we would receive, that 10.5 million at the bottom, was already spoken about, or was already predetermined. And what we did is we decided to cut into the contingency in order to meet that number, because we frankly often run an underspend. And we said, you know what, we're going to take a chance this year, and instead of cutting programs to make the number, we're going to cut the contingency. But if it hits, you know, we'll have a contingency, we'll have to cut later, but rather cut later than in the beginning. So that's why that number looks unusual. Other than that, I'll wait here to see if there are any questions before I move to the other way I present the numbers. Okay, I'll move on then to the other way. The next slide will give you, and this one is an interesting one, that early on, about 3, 4, 5 years ago, when it was requested by the board, I frankly didn't see a lot of value in it, but as time passes, I start to see why this is valuable for people in your position to look at, and it's, budgets are priority calls that we make, right? And how we decide we're gonna fund an uncertain year that's coming. Because a budget is nothing more than that. It's, we think the year will look like this, and we're gonna make some priority calls. Here, when you compare 25 to 26, this is budget versus budget. So they came around this time last year, that was the budget we approved. And now we're requesting that you please approve the fiscal year 26 budget you see on the left. It's a decrease of 2% budget versus budget. And that starts to go into the realities of where we're headed as funds become less available. And I just wanted to give you some perspective that in 24, for example, that number, that budget number at the bottom was 10.9. This past year, as you see there, was 10.7. This new year, it's 10.5. So we're still in neighborhood. Some really preliminary look at funding availability for next year, meaning for 27, makes that number look like 9.2. So I remember a few, maybe a year or two ago, having a conversation with, actually a little bit less than that, maybe about a year ago, with Sally, about which route to take as funding starts to become less available. And one was, let's just write this to the end at the maximum amount, and then we'll go down to 7.5 million. And then the other one was, let's try to integrate those changes over time so it's not a shock to the system. And with the board's permission, we selected that second approach. So you'll see gradual decreases in our budgets for the years to come, frankly, as we gradually take some of the underspend that we've had and work it into years as we move ourselves down to the eventual 7.5 number. So this slide gives you that view that it's a 2% decrease this year. Next year it'll be more in the 10% range, and so on. All right, that's what I have prepared for you, the typical packet that I prepare every year. Are there any questions that I can help answer?
Any questions for Hector? Hector, thank you for doing this. This is tremendously helpful to get to look through all of this.
I appreciate being able to put it together. I really appreciate the consistency of view, because it allows you to compare if you were to pull last year's budget and put it beside this one, right? Sometimes people like to see things in new ways, and then you can't compare year versus year, but I appreciate that the board has been kind enough to allow me to present the data in a way, this way, year after year. It's, as a finance person, I really like it this way, so I'm glad you do too.
Thank you, Hector. Do we have any approval we need to do for this?
We do, yes.
All right, so let's, any other questions before we take a vote? All right, is there a motion for approval? Christopher, seconded by Sally. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, the budget is approved. Thank you to Hector and to the Finance Committee and everyone who's been so deeply involved in getting us through that critical step. Next, we'll turn it over to Shara for the Executive Director's report.
Thank you. Just to highlight where we are with public policy, you will see a photo of the Rally for Children's Families that Robert, Ohio had last week. We have some more detailed pictures you'll see on our Facebook account that highlight one of our board members, Margaret Holbert, and our partner, Hi, Gleason, thank you. They were in attendance, and you'll see some pictures of them in the crowd. What we know is it is budget reconciliation time with the Ohio budget, the Senate version, and the House version coming together. What we know so far is that the KRAR has been restored to the budget. We do hope that there'll be some presumptive eligibility for PFCC, which will allow those payments to start flowing more quickly. And we're all hopeful that the decision is finally coming for the payment on enrollment rather than attendance, which we know will bring a lot of stability to our home-based providers and our community providers. And thank you to 4C for always sharing their legislative and policy outlook into Oprah as well to keep us up to date on what's happening. We also have a couple of key items and the message that Groundwork Ohio has recommended that we go forward with the conference committee, and that is really simply give us our money back for the children. So we will continue to send alerts out for this so that you all can act accordingly. On the federal budget reconciliation part, we're all concerned about the cuts to Medicaid, the impact that that will have on Ohio children, food assistance, and higher education. We looked at this from a twofold perspective of not only the impact that it has on our families, but the impact that it has on educators as well. So we will also send you alerts and information from that with our advocacy partners that we continue to rely on, the CEO Project, NACI, Groundwork, the First 5 Years Fund, as well as 0 to 3. There also is another rally for Ohio kids that the CEO Project is having next week. So we will also make sure to pass on that information if anybody is excited and ready to go to the Capitol for the fight. So. That's where we are in terms of public policy. I also wanted to share with you some highlights that you saw in the pre-reads from the Children's Funding Project. It was a fantastic week in Seattle to talk to 37 new communities who are doing what we've done here and voter-approved initiative for their children. You will see Kenny Francis, who some of you had an opportunity to meet, who is our dedicated Ohio person from the Children's Funding Project to help us in the work that we do. The highlight was visiting King County, who is putting something on the ballot for $1.2 billion this year and have a very impressive cradle to career model that is worth us looking at. You'll also see a presentation that Molly Shack did just to remind you all of what it took to get us here, right? The door knocks, the outreach, the advocacy for both us and Dayton Preschool Promise. And this is kind of to share with you all, get ready for the work ahead. Also, some great information that we have that we'll be incorporating into our Speakers Bureau, and that you should all have. We start talking about when there's opposition or pushback. We may not have any of that here as we start to move forward, but that we have those key talking points ready and that you all start to adopt those as you go out having conversations, talking up, and being ambassadors for the Preschool Promise. This again is the snapshot of the best start for kids in King County, Washington. The interesting thing about that is their local initiative for early education lives in their Department of Health and their Department of Job and Family Services collectively. So they have really looked at a holistic community model that says, how do we push this ahead? You'll see what they've done in government administration, and this is a complicated flow chart of all of the ways that stakeholders have come together to build this collectively in all of the programmatic areas that they serve. So I do this as a snapshot to say, how do we get there by 2030 when we start to look at building on the success that we have and what could we do for our community. So we'll continue to keep you updated on what that looks like and the key aspects, but just wanted to give you a snapshot of one of the examples that we look at. Also, what's coming up is that we know our cost modeling is going to be coming down. As you all know, we've done in Ohio market rate surveys, other analysis, but what the cost model data and information and collection really tells us is how much does it cost us and what is the need to truly provide all the services, all the education, all the opportunities that our children and family need. A very ambitious project that they've taken on, but it really will fuel the work that we have going forward And you'll see that what we're trying to get you is the survey and cost modeling chart that Travis County did with United Way in Texas. And it is really something that we can pull the triggers on, and a useful chart, even Hector said he liked it, where we can put in the number of children that we anticipate serving, the amount that we're gonna pay in tuition assistance, what the age bracket is, and it will spit out a number on the other end that tells us as a target how much we need to raise, find, and fund to meet those needs. Right? So we're looking forward to having this as a resource, and thankful to Groundwork Ohio, the Ohio Organizing Collaborative, and the Children's Funding Project for doing that for Ohio in a cost earn to learn date. It will enable us to build our goal statement that says, what is our key action? Who are we doing it for? Where are we doing it? And what is it? And this is what I hope will inform what we get to eventually is our strategic planning. And we kind of talked about this a little bit with the governance committee, because it's important to realize that our strategic plan is done June 30th, right? We have hit our goals and we've done well. My recommendation and request to the board was that we wait until we get through levy season before we start doing strategic planning again. But that we start to envision strategic planning in 3 different phases, right? So the rest of this levy cycle, about 18 months, we look at how we renew our goals and update our metrics based on the funding we have and what we've been doing. For that new levy cycle, when we win, for that 10 years, we talk about how we align that partnership with CPP and CPS, how we use our data, and how we make improvements to the model that we have to better serve our community and leverage the resources we have. And then the third phase would involve more than just preschool promise, but really convening the community to look forward to 2030 to say, what is our regional, statewide, and national strategy? How do we use that data to goal setting? Because as you know, it's always my dream that we have the Cincinnati Preschool Promise, the Norwood Preschool Promise, the Princeton Preschool Promise. How do we do that, and what do we need to look at? So we take expanded partnerships and collaboration to really look at that strategic direction, and really going back to the ground where we were with Success by 6, using Children's Funding Project A to Z model to then reimagine and re-envision what we could be in this community, right? Today is not that day. I don't think that day will be in 2026, but very soon we'll need to start looking at that and how we do strategic planning. As you know, that is the governance committee's charge to outline and do that. Their recommendation is that we start at least the first 2 phases of this process in November of this year, so that we build out a timeline and we have the resources so that we're ready. So that is our goal. Questions anybody has about that? Recommendations? Then lastly, our enrollment snapshot. You can see where we ended up this year. Very proud to say 1518 is our grand total of applications processed and families touched, and that is 14 more than we did last year, so just a little bit more. We are reconciling and finalizing all that data within the next 2 weeks. Where we have pending in process, because our enrollment season has just opened, is we have about 325 applications that have been processed already. So we have a little ways to go, about 1,000 more before we get to August. But we will keep you informed on how that process works. This data, again, will be validated with innovations, and our final information and numbers will come to you with a snapshot in August as we start to build the new dashboard in preparation for our annual meeting in September, where we'll have finalized numbers for you. So that is my executive director's report. Did I get everything? Yeah? Okay.
Any questions for Shar on her report? All right. Vera, we got your turn next on the agenda.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're staying nice and cool today. Shara was nice enough to give me 2 questions yesterday, so I hope I brought information as much as I know to help you out with that. The first was the levy progress, so I brought you a copy of what was board approved last night as far as the resolution determining to proceed with the submission of the renewal tax levy. So now everyone has a copy. And then the other was our plans for preschool classroom locations. As we're working through phase 2, nothing has really changed. As you know, we have 5 buildings that have been converted to junior highs, which we're very excited about. But we did not lose those classrooms. Those classrooms transitioned to another pre-K to 6, pre-K to 8 building to service the families nearby. We did right size 12 of our classrooms in certain locations due to enrollment. So we did reduce with 12 teachers, 12 paras, and 11 student service assistants or NAP aides. But those were classrooms that did not fill all the way, so we did combine some rooms to then create full classrooms. So our enrollment currently, as we're processing families and meeting with families, we are at about 64-65% already seats reserved for next year. So we are on target, moving forward, and excited about 25, 26. It's hard to believe. Any questions?
Thank you, and thank you for being here. Any questions?
I guess my question about the resolution that was passed is this the exact same language from the last one? Or
I have no clue. I don't have the last one with me to compare. This one says 10 years instead of 5.
Okay, otherwise.
But as far as the amount, because remember this levy is not just for preschool, it also has the money for the K-12 in there too. So I'm sure the language is the same, other than this is requesting 10 years.
Yeah, and I think that this second whereas is also different numbers now based on valuations of property changing. But,
It would have to be.
yeah, otherwise I think it's,
But in terms of specifying what the levy is for, it just says emergency levy, it doesn't.
That would be a board question.
I can't remember. To your point, was there any mention of
guess
preschool?
Carolyn,
I'm assuming it's valid.
do you remember?
I would say, yes, I would say the resolution is just a generic sort of way to authorize and make the decision to move forward. The language about the specific to what it's for, it's not in here. It will come out, I think, as part, as the plan unfolds.
Right,
It will come
The
out.
campaign.
The campaign,
Okay.
right.
I can tell you with 95% certainty that the language is the same. It is required in order for it to be a renewal. Otherwise, it would not be a renewal, it would be a substitute levy. The second is, if you all remember our dear retired board member Deborah also, this is a hot question that came up every year about whether or not the language of preschool expansion and preschool promise was in fact in the ballot language, and we had lively discussions about adding that to the ballot language, and I think ultimately, in order for it to be a renewal, that language could not be added to the original language that went forward in 2016.
Okay, thank you.
That's not on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
good question. Any other questions for Vera? Thank you, Vera. Appreciate it. Anyone else here as an observer have comments they'd like to share with the board? Anyone from the board have anything they want to chat about or for us to discuss before we close out? All right, well, approving the budget feels like a big deal and a big accomplishment. I know a lot of work went into that, so thank you to everyone for that. 4:57, I think we started a few minutes late too, so definitely came in under an hour today. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Ben, second. Second from Ross. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.